Pierre, I haven't seen you in forever. I know we keep in touch via text, but it's great to see you.
Nice to visit with you, Colby. Hello, Jonny.
What's up, Pierre? Where are you in a cabin up north?
I'm way up north in Quebec right now, watching all the games. I'm heading back to Boston on Thursday and start skating with my summer group on Saturday. So look excited about that.
Any big names you want to throw out in the summer group?
No, because everybody kind of goes there. It's kind of like being in a dojo. It's intense. It's early in the morning, and you'd be surprised at some of the names that are there, though.
I'm sure it's unbelievable. But also just sticking in the theme of the Rangers Hurricanes right now, I think if you'd ask most people, the Hurricanes were the better team last night and probably deserved a better fate. But we're seeing it time and time again in these playoffs, how important special teams are. And, it's something that I feel like during the regular season, people talk about. If you're lacking 5-on-5 and only rely on your power play, it's not going to get you anywhere, but that's not what's happening in these playoffs. So have you noticed anything just significantly about how important it is to have a good power play right now? Because it seems to be working out for every team that is clicking.
Well, it's critically important because if you don't score and you have a power play, you lose momentum. But if you have a power play and you generate opportunities, you got the other team on their heels rather than their toes. That's a good thing too. There's a lot of different things in playoff hockey. Having a good power play helps. Having an elite penalty kill helps. Having guys like Jacob Trouba that can pile drive players against the boards in the home rink, that makes a difference.
Or himself.
The biggest thing to me, and this is huge, and it's always been the telltale sign in all playoff hockey, a great save is as important as a great goal. Because a great save in a home building can energize the fans as much as a great goal in a home building. And for the Rangers, they're getting elite goaltending from Igor Shesterkin. And I coached a lot of games in that building. I coached playoff games in that building against real good Ranger teams back in the early 90s. And when those fans are chanting someone's name, it makes a difference. You're in the building, Jonny. You know what I'm talking about. Colby, you've been in so many buildings. You know what I'm talking about. It makes a difference. So everybody's equating, well, special teams here, goal there. Big hits, great saves, they matter too in the playoffs a lot.
Yeah, and then we've seen physicality like we did not see, obviously, during the regular season. I mean, almost all these series, tight or not, have been physical. And I think that's when the energy, like you're saying, it builds, and then players, they see that, they feel that. Players who wouldn't normally finish a hit or go out of their way, then they're like, I want to get in on that. I want that feeling. I want to hear that. So, it's certainly, and I even texted Jonny at one point last night and I said, is it quiet at MSG? It was. You didn't feel the energy coming out of MSG. And then all of a sudden, it was a big hit. And they get to the power play, and then you could start to feel the building coming alive a little bit.
Think about those two shorthanded saves that Shesterkin had to make late in the game. And I'll tell you right now, the crowd got into it then. They got into it. The Trouba near miss on Marty Necas, I'll just say this right now. If he connects there, he's probably missing the rest of the playoffs. Because that's a knockout shot. Hey, look at Jake. I know fans on the other team dislike Jacob Trouba. There's not a GM in the league that wouldn't take Jacob Trouba.
Yep.
Not one team in the league that wouldn't take him. Ask Rod Brindamore if you wouldn't mind having Jacob Trouba on his team right now.
Yeah, we're showing the hit right now, Pierre. And you can see, I mean, it was definitely a hit where he was looking for it. And as Necas got out of the way, the elbows start coming out. And what's interesting is, I was looking at the ice time after the game, and I actually thought Jacob Trouba had a little bit of a rough night. He was a little uncharacteristic, trying to do more. Normally, one thing I appreciate so much about Trouba is he knows who he is, and he plays to his identity, in my opinion, as well as, in the top echelon of players who know how to play to their identity. I think Trouba's one of those guys. Last night, I felt like maybe he was, he dove in on that puck kind of, late in the game, and they give up that odd man rush, doing things uncharacteristic of himself. But I like the fact that Lavi just kept rolling him out there. You look at the ice time for the D, it was all very even. There was no 38 minutes for one guy, 12 minutes for another guy. And Pierre, you've coached at this level. You've been management at this level. You've been ice level. You've had all these different viewpoints. And something that Jonny and I talked about a little bit before the show started was the certain guys have such little ice time in that game last night on both sides. Rempe plays 4 minutes. Nason only plays like 5 or 6 minutes. How important is it, though, to be able to balance ice time, especially in these games that start, barreling into overtime?
Boy, what a great point. Spoken as a guy, Jonny, that actually scored a game-winning goal in overtime in a national championship game. But
I'll have that on my resume.
It's a really good point. So just throw it at you. I remember watching a game once between Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, I think, or Pittsburgh and Washington. And I don't think Alex Stoyanov ever got a shift for the Pittsburgh Penguins in the entire game. Now, we're going way back, but I don't think he got a shift. I don't think it registered as a game played. That's tough if you're a player sitting on the bench like that, because you're basically seizing up. You warm up in the warm-up, you get going, and then all of a sudden you're pile-driven right in there. The thing that stood out to me in that game, management of the Rangers' defensive ice time, I thought, to Colby's point, Jonny, was excellent. But I'm looking at Trocheck's minutes. There's not a lot of times in a game, and I had the privilege. You don't coach a player like Mario Lemieux, you maintain him. You don't coach a player like Ronnie Francis, you maintain him. But I worked with those guys when we were winning cups. And I don't think there was ever a game where either one of those guys played more minutes than any of our defense. And last night, if you look at the ice time, Trocheck's at 35 minutes.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So the coaching staff, whether it's Phil Housey, whether it's Michael Pecker, whether it's Dan Muse, whether it's Peter Laviolette, it doesn't matter. The coaching staff in New York recognize this guy's got it going on right now. He's got a lot of gas left in the tank. And so I think that's a big part of what Colby's saying, Jonny. Asset management matters so much at this time of the year. And I think the Rangers have figured that part of it out. I really do. Peter deserves a lot of credit.
Yeah, what Peter Laviolette has done and brought to this team, you can sense it and it feels contagious. And, I think when he was first hired, everyone had all these questions about, he's gotten to Stanley Cup finals, but hasn't been able to get it done since 2006. And, is this really the right voice for the room right now? And it's so obvious that what he has done, he makes everything sort of like a family as well. I mean, early on in the year, Laviolette actually invited the players, friends, and family to come to a practice and be there and see the day in, day out. It's unlike anything I've ever really seen. Obviously, I haven't really been around the NHL as long as a lot of other people, but it's something that feels a little refreshing for more of an old school guy, which I don't know if he's always been like that, but it feels like Laviolette. You talk about coaches who come into a team and they force players to kind of adapt to them. But it feels like Laviolette has also adapted to the players. And I don't know if that's really a thing with old school coaches. You can maybe speak of that a little bit more, but we're in like a new era, right? With players and how they need to be treated.
I think the very best coaches understand every decade you have to change. And if you don't, you're not going to be relevant. Scotty Bowman coached in 5 decades, and I was his roommate in one of those decades. And I can tell you right now, he changed with every decade. That's one thing that allowed him to coach in the 60s during the Vietnam War era, and then coach in 2000 when we had, iPhones and iPads, so like he saw the broad spectrum. But one of the things that allowed him to keep doing that, Jonny, to your point, is that he knew to change with the times. I think Peter Laviolette's exhibit A of that. What I like about what Peter's done, he surrounded himself with really smart hockey people.
Yeah.
Phil Housey,
some young guys.
Phil Housey, really good coach.
Yeah.
Colby.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Michael Pekka, of all the guys, and I don't know how much you guys have talked about this, when you break down all the stats every day, the most improved team in the NHL on faceoffs by a mile, it's not even close. New York Rangers. It's not even close. If you look at what Michael Peck has done with this team with faceoffs, it begs the question, what were the Buffalo Sabres doing letting him leave Rochester to go to New York? He should have been in Buffalo. He's a Buffalo guy. He's a Buffalo Sabre. He should have been. They all make the big deal about Lindy Ruff going back there. Michael Pekka should be back there. Yeah. That being said, he really has helped. He's really helped the New York Rangers a lot. Dan Muse, a really good tactician. And I think Laviolette just gets how to manage people. Like we were talking about with Jonny, Colby, and the other thing is he's learned over time. He's had mentors. A lot of coaches these days are getting thrown right into the fire. Who's been their mentor? What coaching tree do they come from? Chances are not too many of them have real good coaching trees. He has a coaching tree.
Well, and you can just see the edge. You can see the edge when you're talking about tactician and Dan Muse and all the different talent skill sets that the Rangers coaching staff has. And look, we all love Rod Brindamore. We're not taking anything away from the job he does. But right now, the Rangers power play, the plan they came in with, and the video that they were shown, and you could just see the way they're breaking down Carolina's box or diamond, depending on if they're rotating in or out. Like, you don't see Carolina get seamed on multiple plays in a shift, let alone goal after goal in a series. And I think a lot of that has to do with preparation, video. Obviously, Pierre and Jonny, even you to an extent, playing for Carvey at UMass, who is such a preparer type of guy. But, when you can make your power play players aware, you're not going to handcuff them and tell them what to do, because that doesn't work with those skill elite. No. But if you just give them awareness and a visual of what they're going to see, just say, hey, here's options. You're seeing the New York Rangers go to school right now with their power play.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's pretty interesting you would say that, because Kreider's one of the best slot area players we've ever seen in history in the NHL. I'm talking about, Franzen in Detroit, Holmstrom in Detroit, Hornquist in Pittsburgh, Ryan Smith in Edmonton in the New York Islanders. You start Timmy Kerr, who I had the privilege of coaching in Hartford when he left Philadelphia. We're talking about the best slot area players in the history. Kreider's got to be up there. Has to be. And so that's one asset that's huge. Then you look at Zibanejad, a right-hand shot on the left-hand side of the ice. His one-timing skills are phenomenal. Then you look at the other side. You got whomever you want over there. It doesn't matter. You got potpourri of players. But on the back end, you got one piece of ammunition that's critical, Adam Fox. How many times have you seen Adam Fox get a puck and get his shot blocked? There are not a lot of guys that can do what he does. So his ability to distribute the puck, shoot the puck, it forces Carolina to spread out the diamond that Colby was talking about. And if you move the puck the way the Rangers do, and they move it so well, you're going to break down any penalty killing team. So the most important play for any team, win the initial draw. Don't let them get set up early. Mm-hmm. And the Rangers, because what we talked about before, the improved face-off play, they win a lot of initial draws.
Well, one thing I wanted to add about the faceoffs too, Pierre, and I'm sure I know Colby is good friends with him, but I'm sure you have a good relationship with him as well. A lot of people forget that Nick Bonino was here for 3-4 months on the Rangers, and he actually taught a lot of the centers to flip their blade over the opposite way. So if you're a righty, you would take a draw on the left side with your curve like backwards, if that makes sense. So it's kind of like a forehand draw. You turn over your bottom hand, and you make it a strong side face-off. And you see guys like Gaudreau doing that, Zibanejad doing that. Trocheck's done it from time to time. I haven't seen Wenberg do it as much, but wasn't with Wenberg, so it makes sense. But that's just like a little detail that I feel like gets lost in translation as well.
So well said. I completely agree with you on that, Johnny. It's interesting. I remember first time I saw Nick Bonino play was playing in Avon Old Farm for Johnny Gardner. Like, that's a long way back. But Nick, he was, those Pittsburgh teams that won in 16 and 17, he was a really underrated part of those teams.
Yeah, totally.
And I know Colby's all excited because he's a BU guy. I get. Love
the guy.
It was a BU celebration last night because Celebrini's kind of leaving. So, but he's going to another Terrier guy in Greer. So you're all excited. I get it. It's okay.
I literally texted Greersy and I said, hey, congratulations. Take care of our boy, but do me a favor. Drag Will Smith out of Chestnut Hill while you're at it. All right. We need to offset the loss a little bit. And obviously Greersy had a good laugh, but excited for him. Obviously his dad and his family lives up in that area because he's the, head of sports science or vice president of sports science for the Golden State Warriors. He's got the relationship with Steve Kerr and all the players. Those guys like finish their game and they'd be running into the training room to watch BU play because they all know Macklin so well. How much did you get a chance to see him play this year, Pierre? Because I know you're on the college hockey circuit right now, and we're going to get to Ryan in a minute. I know he's now going to be playing in Boston, so we'll get to see him a little bit more this year, which I'll be excited to do. But how much did you see Macklin play this year? What do you think of him?
I probably watched 25 to 30 games that he played in. Watched him practice, talked to Jay Pandolfo a fair bit. I talked about it at the beginning of the year. I do a show called The Eye Test with my partner in Boston, Jimmy Murphy. And we had Jay on early, probably in October. And I just said, this guy's like Jonathan Toews with more offense. And I've known Johnny Toews, since he was a kid growing up in Winnipeg before he went to Shattuck. So, you kind of get feel for players. And the thing that separates Macklin from a lot of players is his ability to shoot the puck. Like his one-time shot on a power play is unbelievable for a kid that's 17. I have this stat, and Jonny, you'll appreciate Colby. You'll really appreciate it. Brady Tkachuk had 8 goals his freshman year at BU. He had 8 goals. The next year, he had 22 in the NHL. Macklin Celebrini almost had 40 goals at BU. Just try to compartmentalize that intel for a second.
Yeah.
This guy's so good.
Yeah.
He is definitely, I know everybody, what's a generational player? I'll take all the context out. He's a star player that saves a franchise. That's what he is. So whatever you want to call that, call it whatever you will. In 2005, when they did the Crosby, the Crosby draft, but it wasn't the draft, it was the lottery. I was there with James Duthie, Gord Miller, and Bob McKenzie in New York. It was held at a hotel, believe it or not in a TV studio. And when the Pittsburgh Penguins won that, it totally changed the dynamic of their franchise forever. It did. It totally changed their franchise. And, they went from being a mom and pop shop, even though we had won Stanley Cups and they had Mario Lemieux and all these great players. You get Crosby and it changes everything. He builds you a new rink. It brings in new fans. It creates different youth programs. And I think Macklin Celebrini is going to do that for San Jose. I really do. I really do.
And we've seen that fan base. It's a great sports town. The Sharks, when they were getting to a cup final and competing, like that building looked insane. And you look at the Golden State Warriors, who I know Macklin's father works for, they've had incredible crowds through their championship runs. Like, the Shark Tank is a place that needs talent, right? So it'll be cool to see them, have that with Macklin. I want to just ask one more thing about the Hurricanes and Rangers and then move on.
Yeah.
Carolina is now 4-13 on the road since the 2022 playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
There's got to be something to that, right? That can't just be coincidence.
No.
You've coached in the Stanley Cup playoffs. What is it about coaching on the road versus coaching at home? Because this team, it seems to be night and day, whether they're at home at PNC Arena or on the road. And
I think it speaks a lot to their fan base in Carolina. That's a hard building to play in. And I think people that have been down there know it. I'll never forget the 2006 Stanley Cup final between Edmonton and Carolina. Peter Laviolette was coaching Carolina. Brindamore was his captain. But the noise level in Carolina was the equal to what was going on in Old Northlands Coliseum in Edmonton. And trust me, I did an interview before the game in Edmonton. So I'm going to say it was probably game 3 with Christopher Pronger, one of my old players. And we were standing at center ice. Prongs on skates is probably 6'8". I'm standing on shoes. I'm 5'10". and we were talking before Doc Emmerich threw down to me. And he says, Pierre, you're going to have to scream because I can't hear you. So that was really loud noise in Northlands. But you go down to Carolina, whether it was game 5 or game 7, it was so loud. It was unbelievable. It blew Northlands away. So I think home ice for that team kind of matters a lot. But I think the biggest thing is they, for whatever reason, they don't seem as comfortable playing on the road as they are when they're playing at home. They look just way more comfortable playing at home for whatever reason.
Yeah. And it doesn't, and like I was looking for this, especially like a little bit more last night. It doesn't look like Brindamore gets too. Obviously, you have certain things you'd like to see from a matchup standpoint when it comes to having the last change. But he's never struck me as being fanatical about that. And maybe I'm wrong, but I've not noticed him, he plays his 3 lines right now and he seems to just roll them out. And it doesn't necessarily look like it's one guy and probably the top 4 as well. But I mean, am I missing something with that? Or is it just, okay.
I think you're spot on, Colby. The one thing I would say when it's money time or winning time, depending on what you want to call it, Jordan Stahl and Martin get a lot of more time. And one of the things I've noticed over time, he's not afraid to use Jack Drury in those situations as well. So he does have players that I think he's particularly fond of when it comes to defending a lead. But how many times have they had the lead in this series, especially late in game? Like, this has been a tight – people can say whatever they want. Here's my one theory on it, and I learned this a long time ago. You're never in trouble till you lose on home ice in a playoff series. So Carolina hadn't lost yet on home ice, and I do think home ice is going to matter in this series. Wouldn't shock me if it goes back to New York 2-2. Wouldn't shock me if the Rangers went down and split down there and it goes back to New York for game 5, 3-1. None of this would surprise me. But the one thing Rangers have right now, boys, and you guys know because you watch it as much as anybody, this Igor Shesterkin something else.
The difference maker.
And whenever there's a hiccup, you got a guy bailing you out. That makes a big difference.
Look, I mean, that's been the difference in the first 2 games because there's been a lot of even 5-on-5 hockey. Yeah, the power play has been good, but we're talking about 2 1-goal games. And Jonny and I were talking about the Lafreniere first goal, and Jonny wasn't sure because I feel like I grade goaltenders a lot more. I'm much more strict in my grading in the playoffs. I just expect more. I'll say, that wasn't a soft goal, but he's got to have it. And so Jonny was asking me about that first goal. And I said, look, I thought it was actually more of a goal scorer's goal than a soft goal. But at some point, Freddie Anderson's got to stop one that he shouldn't stop. And that's been the difference in game 1 and game 2 is Igor's come up in the big moment. And Anderson, even though he was good late and he was good in overtime and he made a lot of big saves, there's that one different. Like at the end of the day, it's what it boils down to: 1 goal in both games.
So I couldn't agree more with that. I think that's such a smart way to look at it. Listen to some of the names I'm going to tell you: Patty Roy, okay, Marty Brodeur, Tommy Barrasso, Mike Richter. You go Dominic Hasek, Eddie Belfour, all the things Colby just talked about, Jonny. That was a characteristic of all those Stanley Cup winning goalies. They all made a save that everybody said, how did he do that? Look at Bobrovsky in the last round. One of the turning points of this series with Tampa, and I know it was a 5-game series, but one of the turning points
was game 2. That was game 2.
Save. Yep.
The save. Yep. I mean,
100%.
So to Colby's point, that matters.
Yeah.
That stuff matters, and Freddie's got to give him 1 or 2 coming up. He's got to give him 1 or 2 of those. He does.
But also on the flip side of that, I know we said we were going to move on past this, but so many different points keep coming up. On the flip side of that, we've talked about Carolina, in years past not having those game breakers, right? And Carolina, Pierre, I'm not sure how close you pay attention to the analytics and whatnot, but they're the analytical darlings. And you talk about
built their team on analytics. So go ahead.
About expected goals, and Carolina probably has the most expected goals out of anyone in the playoffs. I haven't looked at it recently. I think Colorado was up there. Carolina might have been 3rd actually yesterday. But here's the thing: they're not putting it in. Aho gets chances. Svechnikov gets chances. The pucks aren't going in. And on the flip side, you got Panarin, Zibanejad, and Trocheck, and they're finishing. They're putting the puck in. They might not get as many chances, but they're opportunistic. So at what point do you look at your big guns in Carolina and say, you have to just put the puck in the net somehow?
You have to. You got to score. I mean, if they're not scoring, you're not winning. I'll give you an example. Vancouver just played Nashville in a 6-game series. Vancouver knew if Nyquist, Forsberg, and Ryan O'Reilly aren't scoring, there's no chance for Nashville to win.
Yeah, we're okay.
0 chance.
No matter who's in net, we're okay.
Right? Mm-hmm. And when those guys didn't score, Nashville didn't win.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're those big guns that Jonny's talking about. They matter a ton. They matter so much. And all the analytics stuff is great. I guess it's a reference point for a lot of different people. But I know one thing: you can't analytic heart, character, desire, and finishing ability. There's no equation for it.
I'm one of the people, Pierre, that will say, look, I understand there's good information out there. But I think it's one small slice of a very large pie, and the people that only use it are people that don't really know what they're watching. So they lean on the analytics because they don't actually know what's happening. Because look, hockey is very chaotic. Okay. It looks fast. It looks out of control. But if you really know what you're looking at, it's like a Picasso. These goals that happen, they're $1 billion paintings by artists that guys know exactly what they're doing, exactly who's around them, exactly what their spacing is. And analytics can't account for that type of thing. And it just can't.
Hampus Lindholm to David Pasternak is the Picasso that Colby's talking about, Jonny. That is, and here's one thing I tell you about that. I know everybody's going after Mitchell Marner. It's a terrible line change by Bertuzzi, okay? he hung his partner out to dry. Marner got hung out to dry in a 1-3-1 where he's got to lock that lane. And Colby knows as a defenseman, you need that forward there to trust him, and he's going to be there. And there's no way, I don't care how fast you are, he couldn't match Pasternak's speed. Not a chance. But if that play had happened 3 minutes later in that overtime, the puck never comes out there because it was fresh ice. It was the start of overtime. So nobody had skated in that corner yet.
Good point.
So the puck comes off the boards, and it doesn't come out jittery. It comes out flat. So it makes a big difference. But if there's ruts in the ice and it's a polluted ice surface, as you guys know because you played, it's a tough play to make. Yeah. But Hampus, Lindholm, and Pasternak, that's the Picasso that Colby's talking about.
I mean, Pasta's pointing with his stick. I mean, the whole thing just lined up. There were so many little details. But all right, so look, we've kept you here for a while. We've talked a lot of NHL. Before we let you go, I do want to talk about one other thing with you. You've given your life to this game at the pro level in so many different ways. And I know you've been around college hockey before, but now you're really around college hockey. Your son's a Division I player. He had a really nice run at Colgate. He transferred to Northeastern, which I love that. That staff at Northeastern, Jerry Keefe is one of the good guys in this sport.
We'll be calling his games next year, Colby, on Nesson.
Exactly. Like, last year I had one Northeastern game for ESPN, and then, hopefully they'll find their way back into the tournament. But how much have you enjoyed just getting to be dad and going to watch your son now play at, the Division I level against, incredible talent and in a fun environment every weekend?
It's a gift. It really is. It's been a gift for the last 3 years. He's a kid that's like you guys, committed to the game. He left home at 13 to go to Belmont Hill in Boston. He hasn't really lived at home since he's been 13. He's 21 now. He had his heart broken in 2020 during the draft. He was 105th on Central's list, but there weren't a lot of kids being drafted because of COVID from, the prep school situation. So he went to Penticton, played in an amazing program with the Penticton Vs. Fred Harbinson is just a maestro. It's not a program for everybody, but it was for my guy, and he loved it there. He told his mother and I once, best year of my life playing in Penticton. And he had 3 amazing years at Colgate, and really grateful to Donnie Vaughn and Brett Riley for recruiting him there and winning a championship there for Coach Vaughn in his last year. And he loved it there, but he also wanted more of a challenge, more intensity. And you guys both played in Hockey East. It's not a knock on the ECAC at all. It's just a different brand of hockey. It's just different. And I think one of the big things for Ryan was the opportunity to play in the Beanpot and to play for Coach Keefe and his staff.
Yeah. Well, that's look, I have a heavy bias. I think the ECAC, usually you see Harvard and Quinnipiac at the top of that list. I know Harvard had a little bit of a down year. I'm sure they'll be back. I'm a big fan of Ted Donato and Marcoux and Tortorella and those guys, what they're doing. Don Vaughn is an absolute legend of college hockey. Like there aren't many guys that have just done it and been around as long as he has. And then obviously Cornell, Mike Schaefer, but you move into Hockey East. Now you're playing against, Macklin Celebrini and Will Smith, and you're doing it on a more regular basis. Ryan Leonard. I mean, the list goes on. And that you're right. That's a whole nother challenge.
Yeah. And that's why Ryan did it. He was approached by a bunch of NHL teams as well. And his father would not let him sign a deal. I said, you're getting your degree, then you can do whatever you want. So we're excited for Ryan. It's a great opportunity. And, I think the last 3 years for us as a family has been amazing. College hockey is an awesome thing. It's a gift. Whenever you get a chance to watch your children play. My daughter just graduated from Dartmouth. She was a rower there, and she's now working over in Europe, and it's just amazing to see what athletics can do to help change a kid's life. It really.
Well, and I saw you doing I watched some of the ECAC playoff Final Four that you were on the call for up in Lake Placid. So it's a great event up there. I did it one year, years and years ago, Pierre, and it's really cool that they do it up there.
I think Doug Christensen, by the way, the commissioner of the ECAC, has done a magnificent job. He just finished his first year as a commissioner, and that league's going to grow exponentially. The women's hockey brand in the ECAC is off the charts. It's so good, and the coaches are phenomenal. They're not a little bit good on the women's side; they're really good. The men's side is still very competitive, but Lake Placid is a tremendous venue. They just extended for 2 more years. ECAC, wow. They're going there for 2 more years. But, I got to tell you, Colby, Jonny's over there sitting there, a UMass Amherst guy, and his coach was one of my best recruits, Greg Carville.
I brought one of his worst.
It just shows you how much I think of Coach Carville. Joe Marsh and I brought him to St. Lawrence, had the privilege of coaching him. Then Scotty Bowman and I and our staff in Pittsburgh drafted him in the supplemental draft with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Then I had him speak at my wedding. That's what
wow.
That's what I think of Coach Carville.
I've gotten to know him really well through broadcasting, and I actually, Carvey keeps a tight circle of people. I think, he's quiet, and I'm sure you know him a lot different than we know him, Pierre. But I feel pretty lucky that there's a very solid, trusting relationship that I've gained with him, having never played for him, just as a broadcaster. When I go there, I'm in the coach's room, and we're spending time together, and we're going through stuff, and he's very forthcoming with information, which wasn't always the case. So I really respect what he's done there at UMass. I think that it's great for when you have big brand name schools like a UMass and that have football and basketball. When they're good at hockey, I think that elevates hockey, mm-hmm. and I think that's really good for college hockey.
That is really perfectly said, and I couldn't be more happy for Coach Carville. One of the things the fans at UMass need to know, and I know I spoke to Jonny about this a couple of years ago, or last year maybe, Coach Carville's had a lot of opportunities to leave, mm-hmm. and he's been extremely loyal to the program, and the program's been really loyal to him. But I would say that at some point he will get a National Hockey League chance, and he will do really well with it. He will do really, really well with it.
Coach Carv and I's relationship has gotten much better since I'm not turning pucks over in the D zone anymore.
Right, it's like Bruce Cassidy and I. Now we're buddies now. We were not when I was with him for 4 years, but we're cool now. So,
but Pierre, speaking of coaching, I'd be doing a disservice if I didn't ask. There's 4 coaching jobs available right now: the Devils, Kraken, Sharks, and Jets. Can we start any rumors? Are you throwing your name in the hat?
No, I'd love to go help somebody. I think I could help a staff, but no, there are a lot of, I'll give you an example. There's some really good coaches out there that aren't even being mentioned for some of these jobs. And, I can just look at the college guys and Ben Barr at some point at UMass is going to get an opportunity. He's going to get an opportunity. He will. Coach Carville, we just talked about him at UMass. Jay Pandolfo is going to get an opportunity. I know people at BU don't want to hear that. Greg Brown has already been an assistant coach in the NHL, just like Pandolfo was with the Bruins. Brown was with the Rangers. There's so many guys, and I haven't even touched on the guy. What about David Carl? I got to think, if David Carl wants to leave Denver, and I don't want people Denver mad at me, this is just the reality, he's going to get a chance.
Today he could leave, in my opinion.
That's what I'm saying. So he's going to get a chance. So there are a lot of guys. And there are a lot of major junior guys that are good too. So, the big thing to me, I think the revolving door of coaches, where you're an old coach and all of a sudden you're just going to keep getting jobs, I think that ship has kind of sailed. I know Travis Green, congratulations to my buddy Travis, just got the Ottawa job. I think that's a connection situation. He and Steos are real good friends, and the people at Newport Sports Management are real good friends, represented both of them. So I think there was a conduit there. But, Berube's going to get a job. I don't know where Craig's going, but he's getting a job somewhere. But then there are other jobs that are going to be open. Yeah. There are. And that's where I think the young guys are going to go.
Yeah. I hope that happens. I think there's definitely a lot of talent. I think there's talent in I'm pushing for my guy Steve Greeley to get an opportunity to run a team. I know Greels.
Oh, really well. All you BU guys stick together. I get it. I know.
Except for Greersy when he fires Quinney with a year left on his contract.
Hey, Drury did it too. Don't worry.
I know 2 BU guys have fired.
Yeah, I know. That's okay. No, look at everybody when they sign. I talked to David, by the way, David Quinn, and he's such a good guy, and he's such a smart hockey person. Everybody that signs up for a job in the NHL, they know the best day is probably the first day because that's when everybody's happy. And then after that, it gets harder. And you're never going to be there forever. Everybody knows that. That's just the reality of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, Pierre, we want to thank you so much for taking the time this morning. And, we hope you have safe travels. I know you're leaving Quebec, but it's been so fun talking to you about the playoffs and coaching and all your stories. I know you're full of them. So maybe we can do this again later on in the postseason, and hope you enjoy all the summer skates and everything you got going on.
I would love to come back on with you guys. Congratulations on starting your podcast. That's fantastic. Support that 100%. I know the passion both of you have to make the game better, and that's really important. I think this is the biggest thing going forward for all. I learned this from the late Herb Brooks after the 2002 Olympics. It's a really good thing. He had just coached the United States. Obviously, they lose to Canada. It's an amazingly emotional game. And Herb was sitting at the airport with us. I'll never forget this. It was Bob McKenzie, Gordon Miller, and I. And he said, you guys have and he was really demonstrative and very emotional. He said, you guys have a responsibility to help grow the game. You have no idea how many kids watch. All these different messages you put on TV, they better be the appropriate ones. And he was so animated. And it was something that stuck with Bob, stuck with Gordon, stuck with me forever. That was 22 years ago. And Herb made a big impact. And I just pass that on as somebody that respects both of you. You have an opportunity to grow the game. Keep doing it because it's been really good. Keep it up.
Thank you.
We appreciate that, and we'll see you around Hockey East next year. Looking forward to that. Always good to see a friendly face in the rinks, and good luck. And tell Ryan we send our best.
I will do that. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it, Colby. Jonny, thanks for having me. Take care, you guys. Keep loving the playoffs.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Saravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.